Some of the most beautiful areas in the world are also the most secluded. They're inaccessible to many modern forms of transportation, so the only way to visit them is by foot. This meant that for the longest time, only the most experienced travelers and adventurers were able to see them. Over time, news of their travels spread to the general public, and more people wanted to see what the buzz was all about. This led to backpacking as we know it. Over time, as people got more interested in backpacking, they started to make more established trails, and more groups were devoted to enhancing the backpacking experience. Two of these trails, the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail, are very famous examples. They're both a few thousand miles long, spread across several states, and take many months to complete. Tonight I'm going to share with you a little bit about what backpacking is, how it's good for your health, and how it can also be a little bit less expensive than a traditional vacation. So let's start off with what backpacking is. Backpacking is a lot like extended hiking. REI, a major outdoor retailer, says that the biggest difference between hiking and backpacking is the size of your backpack. When you're hiking, you're only out for the day, so you need very little supplies. All you really need is a little bit of water, some snacks, a raincoat, and maybe a basic first aid kit. Backpacking, on the other hand, you have to have everything you need to sustain yourself for several days, such as a tent, a sleeping bag, a way to cook your food, water, extra clothes, and any other supplies that you might need. This means that you need a much bigger backpack in order to have all that stuff. There are two kind of ways that you can go about backpacking. There's the more traditional style and there's the ultralight style. The traditional style is very highly recommended to beginners because it's a whole lot less expensive way to break into the activity. A lot of the gear is a whole lot less expensive, but that's because it's not as high quality, it's a whole lot bigger, it's a whole lot bulkier, and overall just isn't as easy to backpack with as ultralight gear might be. But it's very good. It's a very good way because it's so inexpensive that you can kind of hone in what you want, find out what kind of gear you like, what kind of gear you don't like. And also, it's I find it to be a little bit better exercising with ultralight gear because you're carrying more weight, so it's a little bit more work on you. So depending on whether you want a more intense workout, it might be good to go with some heavier gear, just have some extra weight on you. Ultralight, on the other hand, is a much preferred way to go backpacking as you don't have to carry as much weight. You can fit all your stuff in a much smaller backpack, but the downside is that all the gear is a whole lot more expensive, and sometimes you run into issues of durability. With traditional gear, a lot of times they make really, like, your backpack will be made of very thick canvas and your tent will be pretty thick canvas because they know that people who are fairly inexperienced are more likely to rip their tent, so they try and make it a little bit harder to do that. Ultralight gear, on the other hand, in an attempt to save weight, they assume that you know what you're doing with the gear, so a lot of times they'll make it out of thinner material, so even though it will hold up better and longer than a heavier tent will, it's a little bit easier to rip because you're using that thinner material, which can be a problem if you're just starting out and you spend $600 on a tent and you rip it on your first time. So the thing that they recommend very highly is that you start off with a whole lot of cheaper gear that's not quite as nice, and then as you go and you get more experience backpacking, you slowly upgrade your gear one piece at a time. That way you can really figure out what you need, what you don't need, and you can save money in the long run doing that. So let's talk a little bit about how backpacking can be good for your health. The National Park Service released data saying that backpacking can lead to reduced respiratory problems such as asthma and just general allergies. It can also be good for your heart health and it builds stronger muscles. While you can do all these same things, like while you can work all these same muscle groups in a gym, the one thing that you can't do in a gym is walk on the uneven ground that you do when you're hiking. Walking on this uneven ground works a whole lot of muscle groups that you might not use anywhere else, So it can be an all around better workout that way. It's also very good for your mental health. The travel website Thrive Global released data saying that backpacking has been shown to reduce stress and depression. It's a combination of the exercise that you're doing, the cleaner air that you're breathing, and also just seeing the beautiful sights that you're at a lot of times can be enough to kind of help take your mind off of whatever's stressing you out and just lead to a pretty calming experience. Backpacking is also less expensive than a traditional vacation. While your initial travel costs will still be the same, as you either have to drive or fly to wherever you're going, the price, the savings that you have really shows once you get there. When you're doing like a more traditional vacation, you'll have to pay for a hotel wherever you stay at. Hotels can be very expensive and can be up to several $100s a night. When you're backpacking, you're camping. So depending on where you camp at, some places have free campsites. All you have to do is fill out a backpacking permit. Or if you do have to pay, it's something pretty moderate, like $10 to $15 a night. This is a pretty big savings in the long run. And the food, a lot of times, if you're staying at a hotel, you might be more likely to go to restaurants or stuff like that. So it's nicer to not have to spend that money. And when you're backpacking, you typically have food like crackers and peanut butter and backpacking meals, which a lot of times you can save money that way too. So now you know a little bit about what backpacking is, how it can be good for your health, and a little bit about how it can be less expensive than a traditional vacation. Thank you.